All right, my business besties. Today we are talking about pricing because pricing is rarely just math on its own. It's psychology, it's confidence, it's boundaries, somehow all wrapped up with a spreadsheet sitting in the background. So, if you're operating solo or with a very tiny team, pricing does three big jobs all at once. It pays you, it protects your time, and it decides whether the business feels sustainable or stressful. Welcome back to Simplifying Small Business from the Growth Table. I'm Karen Velez, and in this episode, I'm going to give you a simple way to set prices that covers your real costs, pays you appropriately, builds in some breathing room, and reduces that anxiety where you feel like, oh my gosh, I hope this is enough. This is designed to work whether you sell products, services, or a mix. Let's get into it. So pricing our products or our services is hard because most of us start in the very beginning with some fear-based questions. When you first get into business, you're thinking, oh, what if people think it's too expensive? Or if you've been in business for a little bit and you're updating your pricing, you think, what if I lose customers? What if I'm not worth that price yet? But underpricing doesn't buy you safety. It buys you burnout. Because when your prices are too low, you're not just earning less, you're also working more hours and taking on harder clients or bigger projects and cutting corners that you never wanted to cut just to make the amount of income that you need. We're going to flip that question from what will people pay to what does this need to cost for the business to be healthy? And this is the simplest pricing system that I know that still works in the real world. And it's three different numbers, just three numbers that you need. You need your floor price. So that is the minimum price that sort of keeps you whole as a business. You need your target price. That is your sustainable, really healthy price. Everything is covered, right? And then you need a stretch price. This is your premium price for higher value or urgency on the delivery or complexity in a project, okay? Having three numbers gives you clarity and flexibility without having to make up prices every single time you take on a new project or you develop a new product. So the first thing is to set your floor price. This is your I'm not losing any money price, right? This is just the bare minimum. For product-based businesses, this is your cost of goods sold plus your overhead plus your profit. Your floor price starts with that cost, your materials, your ingredients, your packaging, shipping supplies, wholesale costs, production labor if you pay help, okay? And then you're going to add that overhead allocation. This is a portion of your fixed costs, your tools, your software, rent, insurance, website fees, market fees, all of those things. And then you have to figure out the minimum profit. The minimum profit matters because profit is what keeps the business alive during slow months and covers any surprise expenses. So your floor price for your product is your cost of goods sold plus that overhead allocation plus the minimum amount of profit. If your product price doesn't cover these three pieces, you are not being competitive. You're basically subsidizing your customers and you're cutting yourself short, okay? You have to find this number before you move on. For service-based businesses, this is your time plus your overhead plus your taxes plus your minimum profit. So your floor price is based on what it costs to deliver the service reliably. It's hard to do this sometimes as a service provider because oftentimes we're thinking, well, when I did this working for somebody else, this is what I made per hour, so that's what I should charge per hour. And that's really not what this version is. The first thing you have to do is decide what you need to pay yourself per year or per month or per week, however it is you want to break it down, right? Then you have to add your yearly overhead. Then you have to add a buffer for your taxes and your benefits, even if you're self-employed and it's just a messy situation right now, okay? And then you have to divide that number by the number of billable hours that you can realistically deliver. Your billable hours are not the same as the hours that you actually worked. If you work 30 hours a week on your business, you might only bill 12 to 18 of those hours. The rest of it is admin and marketing and sales and planning and bookkeeping and customer service and all those things, right? So you can't just say, well, I'm going to charge $25 an hour. No, because if you're only charging $25 an hour and you're only billing 12 to 18, what's happening to the rest of that time? You're not getting paid for it. So your floor rate for your service is your pay plus your overhead plus your tax buffer, and then you have to divide that by your realistic number of billable hours. That is the rate that is your floor rate. That rate prevents resentment in your business, okay? The next step is to set your target price. This is your sustainable price. This is your, okay, you know what? I am good. Everything is paid. Everything is running smoothly. The business can operate without constant urgency. That is your target price. It's not just, okay, we're taking the floor price and then we're randomly adding a certain percentage extra. No. For most micro business owners, the target price should include a profit margin that we can reinvest back into the business. It also should include time for that non-billable work, so marketing and systems and improvements in our business. Should also leave room for mistakes, returns, problem solving, some of that scope creep that sometimes happens with projects, right? Learning curves. If your pricing leaves no room for reality, you are always going to feel like you're running behind. You're playing catch up in your own business and in your income. So your target price has to be your floor price plus a sustainability buffer. And I understand that that is something that has to be a work in progress. And that's why it's the second one on the list, right? You set that target price and that is your survivability mode. This next one is your sustainable mode. So that simple buffer can be, if you're a product person, it's a realistic margin that matches whatever your category is. Okay, so in most cases in retail, you're looking at multiplying your costs by 2.5 to 3 times. And that is what the price ends up being. And that price should cover all of the things that we already talked about to make sure that your floor price is in there. And now there's a little extra in there to keep the business sustainable. For service providers, you need to add your business time into the rate, not just your client time. Okay. And then step 3 would be that stretch price. This is not a random number. This is for projects that require urgent turnaround or products that are higher complexity. Maybe there's higher stakes in the game, or you're doing extra customizations, or it's a service or something where it's done for you versus done with you kind of a thing, or it's just higher touch. There's more of you involved. If you don't offer premium options, then you're kind of forcing all of your customers into the same lane, even when maybe their needs and their demands are wildly different. Now, if you decide that that customer is not for you because you don't want to offer premium options, then that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But if you do want those customers, then this is where peace of mind just kind of gets purchased, because premium pricing allows you to work at a reasonable pace, provide the quality that that customer or client is asking for, protect your schedule so you're not slamming too many clients in just to make the rent, and now you're not dreading your calendar because it's not full of things that you don't really want to do or too many things. Now, we have to think, especially as service providers, but this works for product-based businesses too. Stop pricing like you are a freelancer trapped in an hourly cage. Hourly pricing is useful for estimating, but it can punish you for getting better at what it is that you do. If you deliver the same result in half the time because now you have built up skills and systems, well, an hourly pricing pays you less for being really good at what you do. Think about that for a second. So now you're taking on twice as many clients because you're fitting more into the same amount of time. Yes, you're making more money that way, but you're also working harder. That's not the way it's supposed to work. So instead, consider pricing by the outcome or by package, right? So for product-based businesses, this could be bundles and tiers. You can have a basic option, you can have a best value bundle, and then you can have a premium bundle. Or you can do volume discounts that will still protect your margin, but you're moving more product at one time. Or you can have like good, better, best structures that guide that decision making. If you're a service-based provider, okay, think about packages or retainers. Define what's included, define what's not included, set very clear deliverables and timelines, and then offer them a pathway to upgrade to that higher tier. So packages are going to protect you, number one, because you're going to, from that scope creep, where there are no boundaries, and so the client continues to add and add and add. If you're billing at an hourly rate, they don't see that as a problem, and eventually neither are you because, oh, well, I'm getting paid for the hours I'm working, so. But if you do it as a package, that protects you because the boundary is built into the offer. So before you finalize a price, run it through a series of questions. Does this price cover the full cost to deliver? Not just the materials, not just the time, the full cost. Then ask whether or not you can deliver this repeatedly without burning out. If you sell 10 of these, will your week absolutely collapse because that is the only thing that you can focus on and you're working to all hours of the night to set that delivery? Is there a clear boundary around what's included? If the answer is, well, it depends, then your client is going to hear, no, there are no boundaries and the service is unlimited, okay? Be very specific. And then, does this price support my business goals? Are you paying yourself consistently? Are you investing in tools or outside help if you need it? Are you reducing that emergency work, those projects that you take on because you have to fill in the gaps because the bills have to get paid? Are you building savings for the slow seasons? And then finally, if a customer says no, am I still okay? This is really big because if every no from a client or a customer feels like a crisis, then your pricing is probably too low, or your sales system needs some support, or maybe both, okay? These are hard questions to ask, but they are so, so important to the success of your business. Now, if you're going through all of this and you're thinking, oh, yeah, I am really underpriced, great. I'm glad that you recognize that. But how do you raise your prices without spiraling? Okay. The first thing is to raise the prices for your new customers first. Okay. They're not going to know what your previous price was. They're not going to know the difference. This is going to reduce the fear and it's going to give you data, right? If you start cross charging all your new customers at that higher rate, and you don't see any reduction in the number of new customers coming in, then you know, okay, there was no problem with that price increase. If, however, you increase it and you see fewer customers coming in, yes, that's data, but it's not necessarily negative data because you've raised your price, right? So you might be actually breaking even now at this point with the old price, but you're taking on fewer clients. So use the data. Don't just automatically assume that it's negative when it comes in. The second step would be increase your price in steps, not giant leaps, unless you are dangerously underpriced and you're going to lose the business at that point, right? But a 10 to 20% move is often easier to implement than like doubling the price overnight, unless your numbers are truly upside down. And again, new customers coming in aren't going to see the difference. Now, if you are raising the prices on current customers or on current clients, especially on things that are repetitive, you might just want to hold and guarantee them their previous rate and only do this for new customers. Or you can do a larger increase for the new customers and tell your current customers or clients, hey, we increased our prices by 30%, but we're only increasing them on you by 10% for the next year because this is a loyalty discount or whatever, okay? There's lots of different ways that you can do this. And if you get any kind of pushback, you have people asking you, okay, what's going on? Why are you charging more? just improve how you communicate that value to people. You clarify what's included, what outcomes you deliver, what quality standards you hold, what experience you bring, or what the process looks like, right? Have very specific reasons for why the price is what the price is. And like I mentioned, you can keep those legacy clients or customers sort of on a transition plan. You can either offer them a grace period, or you can try a smaller increase first and then hold that for a year and then go to the full price later on. You can give them a renewal option at the old rate for a very defined amount of time, or you can shift them into a lighter package, right? You kind of still have to set the boundary of the old price is not forever, and figure out a way to fit those clients into that plan. So let's say that you sell a product with $8 in materials and packaging, $2 in average overhead per unit, and you have a $1 shipping and handling supplies allocation. So your floor is already $11. If you sell it for $12, because that's what you assume people will pay, you have $1 left per unit for profit and mistakes and time and marketing and replacements, and that is not enough, okay? And that's bound to stress you out. A target price, has to build a realistic margin so the product funds growth instead of draining it. Now, on the service side, let's say you want to pay yourself $60,000 a year. Well, if your overhead is $12,000 a year, right, $1,000 a month, and your taxes and your buffer add another $12,000, now that's $84,000 that you need the business to generate just to function, right? $12,000 for overhead, $12,000 for taxes and your buffer, and your $60,000 for you paying yourself, $84,000. If you can realistically bill 1,200 hours per year, then your floor rate is that $84,000 divided by 1,200. That's $70 an hour. That's your floor. That's not your dream rate. That's your target rate, right? Or that's your floor rate. And then your target rate builds in the profit and the breathing room. So are we seeing how this becomes realistic? We have to figure these things out, because if you don't look at these things this way, you are going to be losing money in your business, and you're not even going to realize it until it's too late. When you get to the end of the year and you go, uh-oh, this didn't work, okay? So the pricing framework is set your floor so that you don't lose money. Then set your target so that the business is sustainable. Then set your stretch so the premium work has a clear lane. Use packages and tiers to protect your time. Raise prices strategically and communicate value very clearly. Pricing isn't just a number, it's a business system. And I'm a systems girl, right? It should make your life calmer and clearer, not harder. If you want support dialing in your pricing, especially the parts that feel emotionally charged, then come join us inside the Growth Table Small Business Collective. We help microbusiness owners build simple, repeatable systems for the stuff that actually moves the needle: pricing, cash flow, time management, marketing routines and operations, without turning your business into a complicated corporate machine with just one person. You can go to growthtablesbc.com or go to the link in the show notes. You've got this, and I am rooting for you. I'll see you next week.